Now, this interview is being recorded on the go. I never know when my good friend Paula is necessarily even going to be in town. So she's in the car. Please forgive if the visuals or the audio are not perfect, but Paula's been sharing an absolute treasure trove from her experience in getting a policy and learning about this infinite banking concept. So I thoroughly hope that you will enjoy this and get a lot of value out of this conversation. Thank you. Hello and welcome to the Durham Talents channel. My name is Jesse Durham. I've really been looking forward to this day. This is going to be another installment of our interview series where we are talking with folks about the infinite banking concept. Today in particular is going to be a client that I have really looked forward to having on the channel here. And she told me she would. She told me she wanted some time, and that makes sense because I never know when she's home, when she's working, when she's traveling. I didn't know where she would be answering the phone call from today, which is always a lot of fun. I love keeping up and to date with where she's at and what she's seeing and everything. And we'll get into that here in just a second, I guess, as far as, how we met and everything. But I want you to know that this is a good friend of mine. We've known each other for several years now, not because of the infinite banking concept, interesting enough. But she's a mother. She's a professional in, I would say, multiple fields now. I'll let her talk about what she does, just, whatever she ends up wanting to share with us. But Paula, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Jesse. It's wonderful to finally be able to meet with you on here and do this with you.
Yep. Well, I was thinking today when I was getting ready, setting up the tech, like I was saying just a second ago to you before we hit record and everything. And I was thinking that back when I first read the Infinite Banking book, R. Nelson Nash's book, Becoming Your Own Banker, is in 2015. And that was actually the same year that we met. I can't remember exactly. I think I'd read the book first and I'd already started down that rabbit hole of learning about what was brand new for me, just like it was brand new for you at one point. And you can talk about that here in a minute. But actually in the same year that I read R. Nelson Nash's book was the year that we met. And again, kind of like I alluded to in the introduction, there have been lots of travels and lots of other fun between the time. We've had you here to the house. We've had supper together. Our children. We've spent some time together. We've even done some trips together, which is just pretty cool. We've had a unique experience. Prior to me professionally helping folks with the infinite banking concept. So, they might know a little bit more about me. I'd love for, you to tell us anything that you'd like to about your background, if you would.
Well, I'll be happy to. That's kind of boring.
No way.
I am a mom of 3 adult children. And I say adult children because, even though they become adults, they're still children in our eyes. You will soon learn.
That's right. I have my own 3 and I'm here to glean from all the lessons that you can send my way. Absolutely.
And ours are a little backwards. I've got 2 girls and a boy, and the boy is in the middle of the girls. They are my pride and joy. And years ago when you and I first met, and the adventure that we started off together was for those children. And since then I have grown a whole lot. You have taught me a whole lot in changing the mindsets and the experiences that you and I have had together over the past 6 or 7 years has been phenomenal and has really changed a lot of people's mindset of how they think, and kind of give you the, that makes a lot more sense than what we learned in school. I from a poor background, single mom, got married early as a teenager. And at that point I was like, okay, it's time to live my life. Do I want to finish school or do I want to quit? And it was my choice. So I finished high school and ended up going to nursing school in my 30s, and became an emergency room nurse. During that time, I became a sexual assault nurse examiner. And then we tackled, and then a forensic nurse examiner. And then we started doing death investigations. And I retired from nursing at the hospital for 20 years, March 2021. And now am working as the medical examiner for our county. and then do a little bit of PRN work. And some of that PRN work has been kind to me, and have had the opportunity of being on cruise ships and working on cruise ships for a while. And that's one reason why you said you never know where I am.
That's right.
And then but during this time, I remember being in your house with Brent and going over infinite banking and understood it then. And unfortunately wasn't able to start anything like that then. And then you and I started talking a little bit more, and you had gotten involved a little bit deeper and talked to me a little bit more about it. And then I was like, okay, let's do this. And we sat down and you gave me, what plans do you want to do, Paula? What do you want to do with this? And we had a long conversation. And one of those plans was to go on a cruise to Alaska as a surprise birthday present to my now significant other. And we did that. And that was the most phenomenal trip we've ever had.
That was a lot of fun for me to be able to
it's all
knowing ahead of time that that's
me.
one thing that you wanted to use your policy for, was to be able to finance that Alaskan cruise. And it was a surprise to your significant other. And
it was a surprise.
But I was on the inside. I knew about this. I knew that's what you were going towards. And then of course I had the joy of being able to follow you on social media and seeing you at the different ports that y'all were checking in on. So I just had to say something there about how cool that was to be on the inside of those plans, and especially with it being such a successful surprise trip, and then being able to follow it online was a lot of fun. So, okay. If I can, Paula, let me go back to, okay, so we met the same year that I had read Nelson's book and had started on the process just as a consumer myself. And sure enough, I started telling family, I started telling friends, I started telling business partners, I started telling neighbors and church members, just everybody about, hey, did you know you could become your own banker? And I can remember talking about, different things over the course of the years of us just being friends and knowing each other and spending time together, about our progress, about how we'd been using policies and things. And, I would set up, I would orchestrate those events where, at home, we could have friends and family members over, and then have our mentor, Brent Kessler, come in and do a presentation about the infinite banking concept for our family and friends. And I was just sitting there, as a consumer myself, just taking the deep dive, learning more, and trying to tell everybody that I could about, hey, there's a different way out there of doing things, like financing personally for something like an Alaskan cruise. And we still had those conversations here and there, but I remember that being the case, that some years went by, and that's fine. I mean, isn't that an interesting thing? How, you would know exactly what I'm saying if I said something along the lines of, you don't know what you don't know. 10 years ago, I'd never heard that phrase before, and I was probably less of an open-minded person. And you kind of alluded to that when we were just chatting it up a minute ago when we were getting started about, just being open to learning new things. And, it happened to be that I was open to learning when I read Nelson's book, and it meant something to me. You had some time go by, that's fine. We were still around each other. We had chances to talk. You had a chance to see that, okay, well, there's something here going on. I'd love to hear more about your perspective of, okay, you saw a presentation one time. What happened between then and when you did decide to own a policy and to use it for privately financing the things that you wanted to do anyway?
A lot of the time that was between that, I had just recently became single, and I still had our youngest of three was still in high school, was living with me, so I still had some financial obligations and things like that with her schooling and her raising, to lack of a better word. So the finances were, I had looked into it. Let me go back. I had looked into it. I had contacted them. I had gotten a plan. I had everything that I needed, but the monthly deposits were a little more than I could have afforded at that time. So I just kind of let it go my circumstances changed. My daughter, that younger one, is now in her early 20s. So circumstances have changed a whole lot since then. And now was able to, like, and then you and I don't remember what the conversation was, but you mentioned something about it. And I was like, oh yeah, let's talk about that again. So I had remembered it, but it had been in that filing cabinet in my brain in the back that says it's there, but it's one of those things, if you don't see it, you forget about it, kind of thing, until it's mentioned again. And then when you mentioned it, I was like, oh yeah, I remember all about that. But I had forgotten a couple of things. I knew what it was about. I knew the concept, but there were a couple of things that I had forgotten. So with you and I going back over it, and you sending me the videos or telling me where to look at the videos, acclimated myself to, okay, this is how this works. And then you and I talked, and I was able to get another policy. But at one time I was about to try to get it, but again, the finances were not quite in the area that I was going to be able to go in this direction if I was at that point.
Right. And I'm glad to hear you say those types of things, because I know that when I'm talking to prospective clients, life's always happening for all of us. And there might be highs and lows and different things going on. You obviously had a lot of life going on, a lot of life events still going on when you were first exposed to this concept. And I can relate. I can understand. I had a career change the same year that I'd found out about infinite banking. Mm-hmm. We had our second son born. We had a lot of things going on. So I completely relate to those
and
types
since
of
then,
things.
your third child.
Right. Oh my goodness. That has a policy on her now. All of them do. But and it's fun. They are old enough that we can talk about policies, and they have, a real superficial knowledge about these types of things. But what I was saying is that life is always going on, and I have conversations with folks that are asking me the types of things that you're talking about. They're asking me about, well, I've got X, Y, or Z going on, and they're just trying to figure out a starting point. They know that they love this idea. They're learning more, and with more knowledge. And that's my philosophy, that when you know what's going on, you'll know what to do. And some bar might be too high, and you need to adjust that, or take a step back and, time things out as they're appropriate for you. But I also, on the same, coin, but on the opposite side, say that, well, when you know enough to get started, because the time goes by either way. So it's just neat to hear about your experience. Yeah. If you would, why don't you, once you decided that you were going to, revisit this subject. Yeah, I'm going to do something about it. Going to get a policy for myself this time. I'm going to adopt this into, my financial schemes and plans. What did it look like getting started? What was it? Was it a smooth process? I'd like you to get back to the mindset of, okay, I'm going to do this thing. How did you think about things? How did you look at things? How did you feel about things going through that startup process?
Okay. So for me, it was more along the lines of knowing what I had as far as like life insurance benefits with the job that I had left, how much I had with them. And that was, for me, that was important, coming from someone who was raised poor, wanting to make sure I left some kind of financial something with my children, so they wouldn't have to worry about anything. Knowing how much that policy was at work, I wanted something similar to that, if possible, if it was in my realm of deposits and things like that. So I knew what I wanted, just didn't know if what the numbers looked like. So that part was very easy. Getting the paperwork done, once you and I sat down and kind of went through what amount are you looking at having, what's the highest amount you can afford each month, what's the lowest amount you can afford each month. In my situation, there was a huge gap between the two, which was fine. It was very fine. But I also looked at it, and a lot of people look at what's right now. I've always been, and you've known me a while, so you can say yes or no, but I've always been the one that looks outside the box, way in advance, how far way in advance, where am I going to be at in a year? Where am I going to be at in 5 years? And is this money that I'm making deposits for this policy for going to be able to continue that? And if not, then I know I can come backwards and change the amount of my monthly deposits or monthly premiums, depending upon how you want to. So with that being said, and thinking about that, it was easy for me to figure out which way I needed to go. And then the only thing that was left was getting in touch with the person at the corporation, calling me, sending me paperwork. It was very easy. Everything was done online. She's mailed to me or sent to me online. I was able to read over it online, sign it, send it back, everything. It was a very easy process. I am not one that's computer intelligent, tech intelligent. I'm in my 50s. I know nothing about that. It drives me crazy. But this process was extremely easy. I'm sorry about the doors being closed. My significant other just hopped in the truck with us.
We're
on our way to the next place.
You're just fine.
Sorry.
It's all good.
But it was very easy, very easy. No problems at all. And it's been almost a year, I think, since I opened the policy.
Yep. Yep. Past your year anniversary.
Very easy. And then I started making plans, secret plans for a cruise.
Okay, well, let me, if I can,
because
we've touched on that. Let me go back to what you're saying, because I remember that that first point that you made about, okay, you had this career change. You had a great opportunity open up, different schedule, different pay, different benefits, just in the same field, still in the medical field and everything, of course. But I remember that particular point of you saying, well, Jesse, this is the coverage that I had through work, and that's no longer going to be there, and again, like, there are plenty of folks in this space. What I'm trying to point out here, there are plenty of folks in this space, the infinite banking space, that either want to do one or the other. They either want to make everything about death benefit, or they want to completely avoid it. And Nash does say in the book that this idea of becoming your own banker, it's more about your need of finance than it is about death benefit. You have a greater need of finance than you do of a death benefit. You got a greater need of those living benefits, would be a term that we would use over the death benefits. But that doesn't erase the fact that, you came from a background where you're going to have this change in the career and the benefits, and you had other family members in mind that you still want to maintain a certain amount of coverage for. And, I don't have a cookie cutter approach to, an individual situation. It needs to fit them. And you said, Jesse, this is my coverage. I'd like to maintain that, or even, up it, have a greater coverage, and we were able to do that. So I'm glad that you remember that. I'm glad that you brought it up, because while we do want to have a high cash value policy and get to using it for things that we want to get to using it for, you already had these plans of trips and things. You were going to do that anyway. So for sure, it made sense to privately finance that through your policy. But thinking long range, like you were talking about, why not get both? And that's why I really, I really put a lot of emphasis on, I'd rather have more phone calls than less. When somebody knows what they want, they know what they want. When they're educated, and there's plenty of material on our channel. You've seen, you've told me, maybe we'll talk about that here in a minute. And you can give me that honest feedback. I've not arrived. I'm still looking to improve, be better, but I can remember that. I remember having that conversation. You saying, Jesse, these are some things that I want on the long range side of things. I want this kind of coverage. And I remember us talking about, well, okay, these are the things that I plan to do here in the next 12 months. Some of those things were surprises for other people who remain unnamed. And some other things were things that just, again, they were just going to happen in life anyway. And we were able to particularly structure that policy that first policy of yours to both meet those shorter range goals, but also those longer range goals as well. So I'm glad you made me remember some parts of that conversation. Okay, so you've had this policy for a year now. You've not just been paying premiums. Why don't you go ahead and tell us, anything or everything that you'd like to about how you've used your policy?
Well, no. He asked if he needed to leave. I said no.
Do I need to leave?
he was afraid there'd be another secret.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah, he's probably not opposed to secrets at this point when it comes to him being whisked off to exotic, amazing places.
That is true.
It's my turn to plan a secret too.
There you go. Well, start a policy first.
I started looking. Right. So David's birthday is coming up. It's November 20th. And we'd always talked about, going to Alaska and Alaskan cruise or whatever. And we talked about that a couple of times in the past couple of years. So I thought, you know what, this would be perfect time to try to do a surprise birthday cruise. One of the later cruises closer to his birthday, end of September, into October, or beginning of October. So I started looking to see when those cruises were. Once I found one and got the total price and that kind of stuff, I was like, okay. So I knew how much I needed, and I knew how much I was putting in my premiums each month. And I never knew how much was, going this way or going that way. And I reached out to you and said, okay, now how do I contact to find out how much I can take out? And you gave me the person's name and phone number or the email address. So I called and said, just out of curiosity, how much can I pull out? And this was, so I started, like I said, just over a year. I can't remember what my start date was. But so it's just been right at a year, maybe 11, maybe 13 months, something like that. So this was in February or March. And she told me, well, you have $8,000 you can pull out. And I was completely shocked because I'm like, oh, I don't need that much. I just need this amount of money. So I pulled out $4,000 at the time. Very easy process as well. They emailed me a form. I read through it, understood the terminology. I signed it, told them how I wanted it sent to me, because I had options if I wanted it in a check form mailed to me, if I wanted direct deposited, or a cashier's check. And I checked the box that I wanted and everything, and I received a check 3 days later, 3 or 4 days later. It was very quick, very easy process. So I checked that, and as soon as I deposited that, I went back online, scheduled our cruise, then started looking into air flights and airfares and things like that, knowing we had a little bit of time, but also knowing that I as much flying as you and I have done throughout the country, that
yes,
there's certain days that prices are, certain days prices are cheaper, certain weeks prices are cheaper. It's one of those back and forth games. Sometimes it's cheaper to do one way this way and one way that way. Sometimes it's cheaper to do round trip. So I was doing a whole lot of getting online and hitting a couple of apps, one way this way, one way that way, round trip from here to here kind of thing. And once I found one that looked that it was doable, I contacted the company again. I said, how much do I have? They told me what I had, and I said, I don't need that much. I need 2,000. So again, easy process, paperwork signed, had a check in the mail a few days later, put that in the deposit in my account, and then immediately booked our flights. So everything was taken care of. Our Alaskan cruise came out of Seattle. We went to Ketchikan, Alaska, Sitka, Alaska, and Juneau, and then traveled back down to British Columbia to Victoria. David had no idea. This was a secret since February. Had no idea. Only a select, very good friends knew where we were going. And those that
so I
could
made the
trust,
very good friend category. That's
which
good.
was Jesse
Fantastic.
Durham, who I could trust. Oh,
They were her good friends, not mine, because they didn't call and tell me.
Oh my goodness.
yeah.
We're friends. Come on now. We're
So,
friends.
that's right.
When they call and give me hints,
So through this time frame, I told him we were going somewhere. Wouldn't tell him where. He said, well, can you give me a hint? I said, sure, it's somewhere we've never been before. Well, Jesse knows David. He knows that David's not been anywhere.
That's not true. That man makes fishing trips regularly to the exact same place.
True. That is true. That is true. However, I said it's someplace I have never been, which narrows that plot down a little bit, but not a whole lot.
Places in mind that it's going to be one of these four. And Alaska was one of those.
So he asked me if I'm going to need shorts or winter clothes. I said yes.
The appropriate answer.
Oh no, it's yes. So even up until the day that when we left, when we left Asheville, we went to Charlotte, and he says, well, I want to know where we go once we get to Charlotte. And I get my ticket, and I said, no, you're not. We have 2 more legs. I said, we have a total of 4 legs. He was like, what? Well, what time are we getting there? I said, about 11:30 p.m. or something like that. He's like, okay, we're flying to Seattle. I'm looking around to see where baggage claim is, and I'm also looking to see what direction baggage claim is. I said, oh, okay, we need to go to Concourse A because they're in the same direction. So we're headed to Concourse A. And as soon as I see baggage claim, I do the sharp left turn, and we go to baggage claim and pick up our bags. So he's still like, what are we doing? So we get in the cab, and it wasn't until the cab driver says, are you here for the cruise? And I was like, yeah. David's eyeballs go, we're going on a cruise? And I was like,
so
yes,
fantastic.
we're going on a cruise.
That's so
but
fantastic.
He still did not know at that point. He's going on an Alaskan cruise, but still didn't know what ship, didn't know where we were going, didn't know the excursions that we were going on. Wouldn't tell him those. So we get on the boat, and we go to our first port, and the first excursion was the lumberjack show. And I figured, David, I figured he would love that because it's outdoors. It's men playing with chainsaws and axes.
Absolutely.
What guy wouldn't enjoy that? He enjoyed it so much, he about went down there and played with them.
He's about ready to join the lumberjacks.
He's like, so then the next port we had, I didn't have anything planned. We just kind of hung around and walked around Sitka and watched the salmon migrate up the rivers. Very cool. The third port, we were at Juneau, and we went to a salmon bake. Salmon.
So good.
His mouth was watering, and he was just in awe. And it wasn't from the salmon; it was from the 15-foot long rock fire pit that it was cooked on.
Oh yeah.
But he had a fantastic time. I think that's probably the best surprise he's ever had.
Oh, yeah.
For the moment. I'm sure I'll be planning more and using my infinite banking to help fund those. Very easy concept, very easy to pay it back. It's no different than going to a bank or a loan company and getting a private loan and paying $180 a month for $4,000 loan. You just pay yourself back. Best part about it is you're paying yourself back and you're not paying any interest. It's the best part about it. Well, a little bit of interest. You want to make sure you pay yourself interest, but still, it's the best part. I mean, it's easy.
Right. It's different when you're a part owner of the entity that you're paying that interest back to. instead of it being somebody else.
Correct. And it gives you more and for me, it gives me more of self-control as far as, and I don't know if self-control is more the right word, or discipline maybe, knowing that I'm paying myself back rather than having a company that uses my money to fund other people money and charge them an outrageous interest rate.
Sure. Yeah. The motivation's completely different when you know that you're fueling something that you're going to be using again in the future, you yourself on your terms and conditions, like you said, with ease when you want to, for the things that you're wanting to do anyway. And you are part owner of that entity. It's not going to the third party anymore. Oh yeah. The motivation's completely different there. Those are the checks that I'm excited about writing on a yearly, but I don't necessarily get tickled about, paying my property taxes or, other things in life that, they have to be paid and they're going to be paid, but premiums or something that concerns my policies. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because there is going to be that next vacation.
And that's the thing is, like, my uncle has been in insurance since I was a little girl. I mean, I remember helping him stuff letters when they used to do that. Getting paid 2 cents a letter I stuffed.
Oh, wow.
But when I asked him about this, because he did life insurance, he did whole life, he did, term life. When I asked him if he knew what this was, he had no idea. He'd never heard of infinite making and using your life insurance that you buy and that you're paying your policy on, or you're paying, your monthly policy or your yearly policy, quarterly, however you want to pay it. He never heard of that. And I think when I asked you about it, you said, yeah, most insurance people don't know that side of it, which I find that was kind of interesting that they didn't, when this makes perfect sense for anyone who has whole life insurance and would be more to purchasing whole life insurance than they would term life insurance.
Right. Well, it's in Nash's book where he's talking about, having been in the industry himself, and whether it was talking with home office personnel, whether it was, I mean, there are some cases out there, folks might have heard about how Disney used whole life policies. They might have heard about how JCPenney used whole life policies, or Ray Kroc getting, McDonald's going and things like that. They might know about some of those famous cases where somebody owned whole life and they borrowed against it. That's not new, but yeah, the contribution that Nash made to this industry that had been around for hundreds of years was adding scale to it, was saying, yeah, this thing just happens to have so many features that makes it the perfect entity for your banking, for your financing, for the things that you're going to do anyway. And he added scale to it, where now, yeah, I mean, we could be talking about the vacations that we finance, or the business equipment that we finance, or just, I mean, any number of things. It's the infinite banking concept. So, for sure there. Well, you covered a couple of things. I wrote down a couple of things that you said. One of them was, I appreciate what you said about talking about our team members. I'm certainly not a one-man army. I feel like I pull my weight, like I do a good bit in educating folks and spending time on the phone with folks. This is a pleasure for me to be having this, interview with you being gracious enough to share your experience with everybody. But there are some great people for sure that help with processing policy loans for folks that want help with processing policy loans, and of course helping folks get through the paperwork of an application process. So, I appreciate you saying something about how great they are and how smooth that process is. Because I'm not a one-man army. I like to tell folks that we can have, our relationship, that you're in my relationship with me as your agent and you as my client, that we can have as close as of a relationship as you would like, because there are plenty of folks that, they get something, they got it and they run with it. Other folks, they want that ease of being able to make a phone call, have somebody else process the policy loan for them. It could be either way. I tell folks you can be as independent as you want to be in this concept as well, because it is becoming your own banker. It's right there in the name. When I want to make policy loans, I can just call the company up myself and say, I want this much, and here's where I want you to send it to. And that's a beautiful thing. Or you have the office personnel handle that stuff. They're amazing and they're great at what they do as well. So I did want to say thank you for that. I appreciate you sharing that point in particular. And you'd said something earlier about when you went to make your first policy loan, one, that you were surprised about how much was in there, but you were paying significant premiums.
Yes, I was making significant premiums.
Yep, you're making significant premiums. I'm sorry, I can tell you're traveling now, and it's a rainy day, obviously. So the signal's going to be in and out, but that's okay. Everybody's getting the real value of the conversation. I know, even if the visual isn't always the best, and that's okay. But you were making that first policy loan, and you said that you read through what it said. And I can remember that all the way in the beginning when you and I were having multiple phone calls before you ever got, the policy, because that's the way I like to do things, get a real particular gauge of where everybody's at. So again, they can have a properly structured policy that's both going to be applicable for their immediate needs, but also for their long range needs. But anyway, I can just remember at that time too, even talking to you about, hey, I'd love to have you on the podcast. And you told me then, it's like, yeah, I'd love to be on, give me time, because I want to, be paying premiums for a while. I want to get my first policy loan. I want to, take this trip, this surprise trip to Alaska that I have planned. And, because we had structured the policy to be able to do that and handle that. And, so what I'm saying is I appreciate that about you. And I know that folks that are, watching this and listening to this, or maybe have started reading the book as well, they get a lot of value from hearing somebody else say that, you were paying attention, you were learning, and that's so very different from the conventional paradigm of, we'll set it and forget it. You had that background as well. We had some conversations about, what it was like coming up in pretty traditional careers, mine and my background, you and yours in the medical field, how we're, just downright push towards, oh, we lost her. Let's see if we can get her back.
Are you good? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm good. I see you and I hear you.
Okay.
So you've had your policy for a year. You've used your policy. You've had a good experience with the home office personnel, with our office personnel. Tell me maybe what you see ahead in the future for yourself. Have you, we have regular meetings. You and I had, a semi-annual call, just the other day when we were able to line this up, and I like that. And we covered some good stuff there, but anything about, maybe looking ahead?
Sure. Yeah. So part of my plan is to pay off my car, which is around between $8,000-9,000 left, to pay off my car, and then use what my payment is on that car to go towards another bill that needs to be paid off. So I was looking into using, once I had the capital built back up in the infinite banking, just to pull that money out and pay my car payment, or pay my car off.
Yep. I love it.
Probably within the next year or so. Projected, if I continued the way I was continuing with my car payments, it's going to be another 2.5 years. But I'm projecting with the next year, I should be able to pay that off and save 2 years of interest.
Absolutely. And that's what I loved about our conversation that we did have the other day, is we got to talk about the cruise, got to talk about things that you're doing in the meantime. And yet at the same time, you're working on these other financial goals that are in your footprint. And I love it. You can do both. There are plenty of people that when they talk with me, they say, well, Jesse, let me get out of this debt first, And then and they're, and that's fine. That's where they are. And even if somebody says they, Jesse, I do understand what you're saying. I do understand that I could be building this asset and then leverage that and pay off the debt and accomplish both those. If they still want to just pay off debt before they start paying premiums, that's fine. Of course, that's fine. But I do think that it's different when you do wrap your mind around, I can get this dollar to accomplish multiple jobs. I can take this dollar and I can build cash value for myself that'll compound over my lifetime. I can get the kind of protection, like you mentioned earlier, when you had that career change, you still want to have a death benefit. You still want to have I can use that dollar to buy that for me as well. And then I can still leverage this entity that I own to go out and finance my cruise, to finance, paying off my car and paying it off early and, recapture debt that otherwise over the next 2 years. Think about that, Paula. Think about that. You got a big, nice career that you're in and still looking at ahead of you.
Yeah.
Think about the significance here with me of what it means to essentially financially enslave yourself for the next 2 years to other people. I mean, you're giving them work that hasn't even happened yet by signing those kinds of notes. And I don't know, I'm just saying it makes me think about those types of things different when we start promising now our income to somebody else. So that's part of that mindset change. So I'm glad to hear about your goals and also the things that you've been able to already accomplish with your policy. I can't wait to see and hear what you do next. What what parting thoughts would you have? Maybe what suggestions would you have for somebody that's thinking about this idea, researching this idea?
If you want to research it. I mean, that's everyone's prerogative to do that. Sorry, about dropped the phone. If you need time, take your time. Take the time that you need. But if you can, even if it's a small policy, start one and then add later. But you're paying yourself in the long run. And I never really understood that growing up. It just wasn't those things that we were taught.
Right.
Growing up. But if you possibly can, go ahead and start a policy, even if it's a small policy, a $5,000 policy, something small, just to start getting your feet wet and seeing what you can do for yourself. It's not going to be a whole lot of money, probably. It's going to take a little while before you can actually pull anything out, but you know that it's there in case it's needed for a rainy day or something that you need that comes up unexpectedly, rather than trying to pull together money that you don't already have.
You said so many valuable things there.
I would encourage everyone, if they're thinking about it, just to start a small one, and then at any time they can add to it. It doesn't have to always be small.
Right. There's so much there. I mean, it just goes to show the things that you're catching on to because of what you've done so far, talking about, well, anytime you use the word capital, I'm just getting thrilled. That's just not normal vernacular. Same thing. It's like, I never heard that word growing up, but here we are. We know different things now, and we get to do different things now. And that even includes the types of, conversations that we're able to have about, I am proactively building up capital. That way I don't get to a place, for example, where, I don't have that rainy day fund. If that's what you want to be able to use a policy for, you can. Can you use it for the next cruise? Well, yes, you can. Can you use it for paying off the car? Well, yes, you can. I mean, once you realize that capital has to reside somewhere and that you can actually own that thing where it resides and that it can compound there and that it can grow and that you can still access it at whatever level.
And to me, it's better to have the capital for me than it is to have the capital for somebody else.
And no question. Yeah, that's the opposite side that we were just talking about a second ago. We're already, when we sign a note for whatever, for say it's our cars, for example, I mean, we're signing our future earnings away to someone else for the next 5 years, or, if it's a mortgage, for the next 30 years, or just whatever the case happens to be. But, I appreciate what you said too about, numbers. I tell everybody, when you're picking a premium amount, it should be somewhere between. And Nash uses these descriptors himself. He says it should be reasonable. It should be logical. But also the other end of the spectrum is using your imagination, and if you're doing those things, if you're picking a reasonable and a logical number for you, but it's also ambitious, it's also an imaginative number, you're probably going to be somewhere in between those. And once you arrive at something, if you err a little bit on the side of being conservative, yeah, absolutely. I'd rather it be that direction than too ambitious. It should make sense for you. It should be a logical, and that happens because we had multiple conversations before you ever got a policy, and we're owning a policy and paying premiums, and we got ongoing conversations, and I appreciate this one. I appreciate it. For everybody, of course, that's tuning in, if they got questions, I'd love to hear those in the comments, but you've covered so much, and I appreciate you being willing to share your experience with everybody. It really means a lot to me, as a friend, it means a lot, your willingness, because I know you're always busy and you travel and you got things going on. So sincerely, I really do appreciate it. I look forward to our next conversation where we'll be talking about, what you got in the pipeline, whether David knows about it or not. It's going to be a lot of fun for us. And I just want to say thank you. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I appreciate you carving out the time to jump on here.
Thank you. And for those that are listening, I'm not sure when this podcast will go out, but happy Thanksgiving and God bless you for the new year and Christmas. Thank you, Jesse, for being such a wonderful friend. And thank you for inviting me today.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, and we'll be in touch. Okay. You guys have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You as well.
Take care. Bye-bye. My name is Jesse Durham. I hope that this has been helpful for you. If you'd like to continue this conversation, I'd love to be able to hear from you. You can reach me at 828-817-4223, or you can email durhamtalents@gmail.com. This has been an absolute pleasure for me. I look forward to our next conversation. Have a great day. Take care.